The Angry Chicken is a production of Amove TV. Bookmark amove.tv for more gaming and esports shows. The Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you via patreon.com/TAC.
Everyone, get in here! Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight.
A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is The Angry Chicken.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Angry Chicken. I'm Garrett Weinzerl. She's Jocelyn Moffat. He's Willie Dills Gregory. If you're watching live, we're a few minutes late, but it's cool. Everything's working okay. Everything's working right. Except Jocelyn and Dills can't hear the music because Skype is stupid. But that music still gets me jacked, and I hope that you're humming it in your heads, guys, while you're waiting for me to start the show.
I mean, I've heard it many times. So.
Yeah.
170 to be exact.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true.
Plus 30 Brawl episodes.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And some patron hangouts.
Yep.
Various other times. Yeah.
Yep. And, you know, when you're just sitting at home alone, you're like, I want to listen to the podcast intro that I do every Tuesday.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're sitting there with your guitar and you just start, playing the intro to your own damn podcast. It's good times.
Well, so I just did a whole music video thing for the MGA.
Yeah.
And I was very excited about this song until I got to the point where I mixed and mastered the thing and listened to it probably 100 times. And I'm emailing it to people and they're like, "Oh my God, it's so good. Go back to this one part." And I'm like, go back and fix a thing. No,
No.
I just don't want to ever hear it again now, which is too bad because it's cool. It sounds great. But this is what happens. This is like a little behind the scenes, but a lot of people do. You can't listen to your own stuff after a while because you just burn yourself out on it.
Yeah, that's such as life. We hear that all the time about making video games, and that one of the things that are special apparently about Blizzard games is that the team still wants to play the damn game when they're done making it.
I know for a fact Yang Wu plays a lot of Hearthstone because I see him on almost every time I'm playing.
Yeah. I've seen some of my Blizzard buddies in WoW recently, but that's to be expected.
Everybody's in WoW.
I've seen
recently.
all of my podcast hosts, regardless of what podcast you're on, pretty much playing
Except
nothing but
me.
World of Warcraft.
You haven't seen much of me in there yet, which
No.
is very disappointing because I basically did not play any video games for the last week except for one short stream. And I think I'm not even level 101 yet.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of work to do.
It's cool, man. It's cool.
So we're still in total no spoiler mode chat room.
Sorry. I mean, I've started my quest lines. I've done some of that stuff, but yeah, it was all done with 20 minutes just in between that I had, And then the problem with that is I just want to go. I want total immersion, right? I just want to spend a day playing for 16 hours. That's what I want to do, and it's killing me that I'm not doing it right now.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants with a new WoW expansion, right? I haven't even had a chance to have that. Now, granted, I'm level 108, so I've managed to get a few more hours in than you, Dills, clearly, but I still haven't had that day where I got to just sit down and just binge it until I'm finally okay, 16-hour day done. I can go back to being a normal human being because I've gotten it out of my system. I still haven't had that day. It's not looking like I'm going to have that day. Guys, I think I might just have to play this in adult increments, and I don't like that.
Okay, so I'm 110. I've started my alt. I'm doing the 110 zone. I have done 2 different hunter specs. I am all over this expansion. I have had 12 to 16 hour days, and I still don't feel like I've had enough. So even if you had the 16-hour day, Garrett, I'm telling you, it's not enough. This expansion's amazing.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I know.
In that,
I don't know if that's good news or bad news.
it's unfortunate that it's so good because I'm waiting to get my life back and to want to pour myself back into the other Blizzard games like usual. Usually within a given week, I'm like, yeah, it's Heroes Day. Yeah, it's Hearthstone Day. Yeah, it's Overwatch Day. And right now I'm just kind of I got to try this for Overwatch. I got to try this for Hearthstone. And really, I just want to get back into WoW. And that's to be expected. Yeah. A lot of us are going through this. It's fine. It's cool. Hearthstone's in a brilliant place right now. We just wrapped up Karazhan. We're going to talk about that in a second. If the WoW talk at the beginning is hurting your ears, relax. It'll be over momentarily. And if it's not enough for you, well, Jocelyn and I have been talking some WoW spoilers on Embrace the Spoilers. If you're watching this live, It's not actually up yet, but if you're catching it on the podcast, go and subscribe to the Embrace the Spoilers feed, because Jocelyn and I are going to do 5 weeks, 5 zones, talk about the spoil the story for you. So
The lore.
yeah, go check that out. That'll be fun. So anyways, we also have something for you guys. We have a code, which you can use over at harrys.com. Harrys.com is sponsoring this episode of The Angry Chicken. They've got fantastic razors. They make it themselves. They have their own warehouse in Germany, of all places. If this was Overwatchers, I would make a correlation with how we just got a German map in Overwatch, but it isn't. So I don't know. What's the German equivalent in Hearthstone? Do we have one?
The funnel cake guy?
Oh, there you go.
There's a lot of
All right.
beer drinking,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, all right.
And
Yeah. There's
I
a
don't know.
lot of taverns and funnel cake guy. We'll go with
okay, funnel cake, sure.
go with all the references to
German
funnel
thing?
cakes.
Aren't
not
Germans funnel cake? I thought that's where they came from.
I don't
know.
I'm not actually sure. I always thought it was a skeezy local county fair thing. But
Yeah, I thought it was just like invented by carnies, right?
yeah.
Oh.
Like I mean, okay, they do like sausages, right? Which technically you use a funnel to. I don't know. I'm reading right now.
You're
But
reaching. Okay,
Come on,
so
chat room. Tell
so
me
we
I'm
can't
right.
tie it
Tell
in-
me where funnel cakes
we
come
can't
from.
tie it in directly, but we can say that if the possessed villager went to harrys.com and picked himself up a nice Truman starter set to take care of that crazy beard he has, maybe he wouldn't be so possessed. Or at least he wouldn't look as crazy, so maybe some of the local villagers would want to help him, as opposed to apparently leaving him to go fend for himself and poop out 1/1s when he dies. But yeah.
by the way, here we go, Jocelyn. I can vindicate you right now, okay? In modern day America, we've come to associate funnel cakes with the Pennsylvania Dutch, a group of mostly German-speaking immigrants who came to Pennsylvania during the 17th and 18th centuries.
Well played,
Jocelyn
Jocelyn.
knows more about American history than I do.
Well played.
That's sad.
Well played.
Oh, I win.
That is awesome. I'm so happy about that. I'm not sure it's American history. It's German history, Dills. It's German history.
I mean, I kind of, but Pennsylvania Dutch, right? Yeah,
Okay, fair enough.
Pennsylvania.
Fair enough. Okay, all right. Well played, Joss. Well played. But what I was getting at is you can use the code TAC over at harrys.com. You can get their Truman starter set, which is usually $15. You'll get $5 off. You'll get it for $10. And you'll get some fantastic blades. They have plenty of other items over there. I recently got the aftershave balm, and I love it.
Yeah, they sent me a bunch of that too. And I actually haven't shaved in like a week, and it's killing me because I would not care, but now I've come to really enjoy like the smooth face feel. So after the show, I may have to partake in some Harry's shaving.
Yes, it's good
I'm
stuff.
actually looking forward to it quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we thank them. We thank them for their support. Go to harrys.com, use the code TAC, and save $5 on a Truman starter set. Now we have some Hearthstone stuff to talk about because I don't know if everyone noticed, but an adventure wrapped up this past week. So let's get into this week's Hearthstone news.
Good news, everyone!
So, Karazhan has come and gone, guys. It's wrapped up. Week 4 launched on Thursday this past week. Jocelyn and I had a chance to play through it together. Dills, sadly, well, I guess not sadly, because it sounded like it was fun. You were doing real sports golf things.
Yeah, I was having a good time. Yeah, I did play it on my iPad, so I feel like I didn't quite get the full experience because I was kind of just, rushing through and stuff. But we were somewhat right about how the final battle went, right?
Yeah, we were.
I didn't quite get Medivh and Malgazar, but Medivh was definitely heavily implied that he was there.
He popped up for a second and went,
Yeah.
haha, it's time for my party. Screw
Yeah.
you guys.
It was like he didn't even care that he had just been pulled into the friggin' nether for like a week. He was just like, oh, sweet, I'm done. Let's go party. And that was it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's it was fun like that, wasn't it? I would say we were close, and I would argue that this was a game of horseshoes, so I'm going to be okay with it.
Yeah.
We were close.
Now, who was the character that we fought before with the like orc person?
It was
that
just
somebody from-
literally random orc number 2.
Okay. Because I was trying to remember if that was like some
No.
character from Karazhan that I had forgotten, but I don't think so. It was just an orc thing.
I think it was
Right.
just a made up orc
Okay.
because
All right.
basically the idea was that what's his name? The butler guy.
Morose.
Morose, thank you. He opened the wrong portal, so he just opened it to a random dimension and we got this random orc that we had to fight. Who somehow was still associated with the Horde because then brought all Orc Horde warriors.
Yeah, that was the one thing, right? Like, all in all, I really enjoyed Karazhan. I think they did a good job with it. I think they did a fantastic job kind of stamping, the Hearthstone brand into an existing Blizzard thing. And I know we've talked at length, especially with you, Jocelyn, about how that's not necessarily our favorite thing in the world. League of Explorers was so great and so fresh that I think that's what we all would prefer that they do. But if they're going to bring in stuff that already exists in World of Warcraft, it is nice when they put their own spin on it, and I think they did a really good job with it. That said, the fact that your setup for your final boss fight is that you open the wrong portal and we get kind of a pedestrian orc warrior instead of something absolutely wild seemed like a major missed opportunity.
I kind of thought we were going to either fight more people and there would be some sort of, like, when Medivh came back, he'd heal you to full or give you 30 armor or something like that. But I thought we were going to have, like, more encounters before we got to Medivh or Malchezaar. And then, or conversely, I thought if, the first time you go through, you get the orc, and then the second time you get another random encounter. Like, I thought it might cycle through 3 or 4 different random people to kind of keep you coming back. But yeah, just to have the one random 15 health orc who wasn't even a character that we recognized, and then just jump right in.
It was kind of tough, though. Okay. I was afraid of dying in that fight for the first time in the entire Karazhan experience. Because I think I was down to 11 health after fighting her, and then all of a sudden here comes Malchezaar at 30, summoning 6/6s, and I was like, this might be a problem, but it actually wasn't. I was able to win. Despite all that, but it was, so I did like the 2 fights in one type of thing that we kind of predicted. But yeah, that's a good idea to have every time you do the fight, it's a different portal and a different character with a different hero power would be really cool. But now none of us have done the heroic version, right?
Right.
Because we don't care. So we don't know what happens in the heroic version. Maybe there is something there. So,
this is the wrong show for heroic adventure impressions, sadly.
Yeah, if you were here for some strategy, deep strategic talk about how to beat the heroic versions, then bad news.
Maybe if his schedule works out, maybe we should have Ro on next week and get his thoughts on heroic.
That'd be interesting.
Because usually between the 3 of us, one of us is into the thing the other 2 isn't. But in this particular instance, we are united in our madness surrounding heroic adventures. So
people are saying heroic was tougher, but it was the same. So I guess there wasn't. Okay, so they just made it harder.
Yeah. Right. I heard the heroic version of this was quite difficult. Kind of like chess, you had to get lucky.
I mean, it should be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
The final boss.
It's the whole point of heroic, I think, in general. Like, heroic should be hard. I don't agree that regular should be hard. I'm completely okay with how difficult regular mode was in my first playthrough of Karazhan.
I actually completely forgot that I did the same thing in week 4 that I did in week 3. I forgot I hadn't actually played it. So I went to build the rogue deck today, and I was like, I don't have the where are my cards? Oh, right. I didn't play through it. Garrett played through it. Right.
You did it again. You did it again, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
Way to be.
I know.
You did get some super cool cards in this wing, though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. Like, finally, Malchezaar's Imp. I'm excited. Bookworm, I was excited about. Medivh's Valet. Medivh himself.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the Moonglade portal might actually be a decent card. So
the Druid healing one, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But heal for 6 and summon a 6-drop.
Yeah.
So, and there's really good 6-drops in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can get like Thaurissan or Sylvanas or something like that. So, some cool cards. I will say that I feel like this last wing, though, because with the first wing, we got a bunch of, it seemed like new decks and some new archetypes. I feel like that started to slow down as the wings came out. And I was a little surprised by that. Because I would have thought that you would have like completed the set and then you would have been able to actually make the archetype you were theory crafting before the whole thing started. But that didn't quite seem to be happening because we just had this big tournament, the One Night of Gamers or whatever it is, the ONOG thing that just wrapped up after like a year. Finally wrapped up. And what was the new deck? It was Malagos Druid with Yogg. Was the new deck that everybody had. somehow. Every single, I think, in the top 8 had this deck, and I was just like, where are the new Karazhan decks? What happened here? Where's like our Dragon Paladins and our Menagerie decks and our Beast Druid? What happened?
I think it's still getting fine-tuned. I'm not gonna cast judgment and be like,
Sure.
Karazhan, no effect on the meta at all. I'll give it another. I'll wait for one more tournament. So
Well,
that
I think
has,
there was a lot of effect. It just seemed to be front loaded. It
Yeah.
seemed like as the as the adventure continued, it stopped having so much of an effect. So it's kind of interesting. I'm wondering if that means that the cards at the end were maybe less impactful, or that maybe that could be right, that the pros don't feel like they've theory crafted enough with these new archetypes to make them work. Because I really expected a mid-range Dragon Paladin to become a thing, right?
Yeah.
And it just hasn't really materialized yet. So we'll see, though. We'll see. There is still plenty of time, obviously, to sort this out.
I think so as well. And also, it kind of makes sense to me that it would slow down because, some of the tools we got, even though if you didn't get all the tools, you were getting new tools for archetypes that really didn't exist before. Even if you only got one half of what you needed for Beast Druid, it was one more thing to add to Beast Druid. So you were seeing Beast Druids pop up. Same thing with Discard Warlock. It had really never been a thing up until now. So getting just one card that benefits discarding in one way, shape, or form got people out there, got them trying Discard Lock. And now as the back half of the set comes in, it's just kind of filling in holes. Whereas I think
That's
the
true,
innovation
yeah.
came from the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. The only real archetype that I saw happen immediately after this wing was the Burgle Rogue. I started seeing a lot of that on the ladder. And I don't think it's a good deck, but we are going to talk about a version that might actually work in the strategy section. But that was, I think, the card there was one piece that was just huge that was missing.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do it without that piece, right? And that was the Ethereal Peddler. So
Yep.
everything else you could kind of do. The Silverware Golem was enough to go for Discard Lock, right? You didn't need Melkazar's Imp, although it makes it better. But everything else, it was like, okay, well, we could do a version that's okay. That card, though, I think was the last piece.
Yeah. So closing thoughts on Karazhan as a whole, guys?
I would say I still probably enjoyed Nax and League of Explorers more. Nax, maybe I have a higher, like it might get a couple extra points just because it was the first time we got new cards. We were just playing with the vanilla set at that point, so it was a huge deal to have some new cards infused into the meta. But yeah, I don't know, better than BlackRock, right? But
Jocelyn, you and I talked about it after we finished our playthrough, and I think we both ranked it our second favorite under League of Explorers.
Yeah, and I was having the same problem. Basically, we all said, League of Explorers set the bar. But then I was having the same problem as Dills. I'm like, I don't know what I liked more, this one or Nax. And is that because of all the other factors surrounding the Nax launch? Is it because it was so impactful? Or, was the actual experience good? It's like, I can't even remember. It was so long ago. I can't even remember the experience at the time, or even if I could separate that from the fact that it was like the first ever single player adventure in Hearthstone. So
we also got things like Sludge Belcher and
that's what I was saying.
Chow,
Creeper and Zombie Chow, and
so much. So
yeah. And
it's hard to separate all of those feelings from, if Nax came out today, how would you feel about it? So I don't know. I think Karazhan had some really great fights. I did really enjoy the dragon fight with the portals in the Spire. I thought that was really, really cool and really well done. So they had some interesting takes on mechanics, but League of Explorers, I think, just for flavor and everything, tops my list of adventures.
Well, cool, man.
Yep. But I definitely enjoyed it, and I'm still enjoying it, and I still have lots and lots of decks to try. Mm-hmm. So, to me though, it's like we talk about on the show, we just need consistent new content, and we'll be happy.
Yeah.
And every single adventure doesn't have to reach the heights of League of Explorers, because that was a very high bar to set. So it's okay that it's okay that one of them is just so much better, because it was just so good and everything kind of fell into place perfectly, right? And we had, of course, cards like Reno and Elise that were just super fun. And, Sir Finley, that really do a lot of cool things.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to match that every time. So it's not like I'm expecting that, but.
Sir Finley's actually in Warcraft now, and it makes me so happy.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's in. Sorry, spoiler
Your
deals.
Murky's in there too, right?
Yeah, Murky's in there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Wait, Murky's
All right,
in.
that's enough though.
What? I didn't
That's
know. Well, wait.
I only said Sir Finley because it's actually Hearthstone related, but yes,
Sure.
Sir Finley's
Sure.
And let's face it, I don't think.
which is cool. The back and forth, like now Hearthstone's impacting Warcraft is really cool.
Yeah, and let's face it, I don't think Sir Finley is really a giant plot point in Legion. I don't. It's like,
That is
oh,
murky.
Sir Finley was Gul'dan all along.
Sir Finley doesn't turn the tides against the Legion.
Sir
It's
Finley
not
is
him
actually-
popping out of the cauldron. Okay.
Yeah, Sir Finley's actually the vessel for Kil'jaeden. You
Yeah.
find out later.
Oh, now I want that to happen so badly.
That would be simultaneously one of the most awesome and most awful things I could ever do for Warcraft lore.
Yeah.
Anyways, so there's a little too much agreeing on it going on this episode, but yeah, I'm with you guys. If I meter if I take into account the fact that Nax was first and had an insane impact on the game because it was just the first time new cards was ever added, if I take that into account, I think I like Karazhan better. If I don't put that aside, then I think Nax takes second place for me. But overall, it's Karazhan, man. It's a solid adventure. Really.
Oh, it definitely was, and I love all the sparkle and the pinks and purples and blues and just the whole aesthetic of the adventure. I keep wanting to say expansion,
Yeah.
but the whole aesthetic of the adventure I really enjoyed as well. I think they did a great job. They really did.
Actually, Garrett, what's your take on the artwork for not only the cards, but for, say, like the maps and all, just in general, how they did on as far as
overall,
this artwork compared to others?
I think it was just fantastic. There's some really strong artwork in this expansion, but there's been some, honestly, ever since I think it was the Grand Tournament, I think that their art game has just been on fire, because that was when we I think the entire set used no reused assets.
Yeah, because originally they were using a lot of like just straight pulled from the TCG.
Oh, the base set.
Yeah.
The base vanilla Hearthstone is almost exclusively original Warcraft TCG artwork. I want to say there's a few unique things in there, but it's mostly all reused from TCG, and some reused artwork made it into Goblins versus Gnomes, and I think even did BlackRock? No, I think GVG was the last one to use reused assets. Once we got into, I don't know. I'd have to go back through to cover my butt and make sure on Blackrock Mountain. But it seemed like they found their voice with the Grand Tournament. Even though I think we all look on the Grand Tournament as kind of the lowest point for new Hearthstone content, because it had such a tiny effect on the meta, and so many things just didn't work out, like Joust. But I think in terms of art direction, that's where they really found Hearthstone's voice.
That was where they actually deviated from straight World of Warcraft as well for the first time. They took an existing thing and changed it and made it, rather than it's the Argent tournament, this is the Grand Tournament that happens after that one, after the Lich King has been defeated, so.
Yeah, but
and I agree with you. I think that they did kind of find their way there, but there's some of these cards I'm looking at, and obviously like the portals are kind of built in, so those are a little bit boring because, that's a thing we kind of already know. But a lot of these characters that were kind of created, the takes on them are awesome. And then, of course, the crown jewel, Zubat, for the entire set.
Yeah.
Zubat's awesome.
Zubat's fantastic. And I loved like the in jokes, like who was it? The pompous thespian holding an Anoyotron head, like that kind of stuff, where like the art speaks to Hearthstone specifically, and it's not just drawing from Warcraft. I love the happy version of Medivh we've received. Like, when have we ever seen Medivh smile, let alone have his hood down and holding some wine? Like, yeah, I'm getting my drink on. What? I'm the guardian of Azeroth.
Now that you bring that up, Pompous Thespian trades evenly with Anoyotron. What's going on here? Why is he feeling so?
Oh, you're right.
Why does he think he's the man here? It's a fair fight. You both die at the end. All right, whatever. Anyway,
I never really thought about that.
It should be a 2-3 or something.
But you're right. But yeah, and I was talking on Twitter. I'm in love with a painting for Nightbane Templar. I just love that piece. That's from an internal Blizzard artist. It's I think Mr. Jack, I think did that one. I just love that painting in general. And on top of that, after the fact that I complimented on Twitter, I noticed that it was the Paladin tier set from Uldwar. So I was like, holy shit, extra super awesome points.
Oh, wow.
I love everything about this piece.
I did not even notice that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I started running ICC in that set piece. Or no, I guess because TOC was in between, so never mind. I think I had actually replaced it with TOC gear. But now there's some just awesome artwork throughout all of Karazhan. So good job, guys. Good job, Team 5. Good job. And speaking of which, if we there is some non-Karazhan stuff to mention, which is Ben Brode got on the horn on the subreddit this week and gave his side of the story on how the Hearthstone dev team takes feedback, and even specifically negative feedback, because what was it? User Al C. Xander basically asked, how do you guys feel when the game is critiqued after each release and even the ongoing stuff? And so Ben Brode got on there and made a really nice, well-written, lengthy post. Nothing that really blew my mind, but everyone's been talking about this, so I felt we had to bring it up. But basically that they love the feedback, both positive and negative.
Yeah, they have mentioned this in the past, so if you're paying attention, then you do know that they all read the subreddit pretty much every single day. And he mentions it here several times, even that he reports bugs, and then the QA people are saying, hey, we know, we're on the subreddit too. You don't actually have to tell us. But I thought that the coolest part of it was just that he directly addressed the arena problem, which I think has become so. Lately, what you've been seeing on the subreddit is two major things. And one is RNG is just out of control in Hearthstone. It's taken away all of the skill, and it's made it so that, some of the arguments you see now are that the pros don't win as often as they used to. And there's many, you could spin this in lots of different ways. You could definitely say that RNG has a bigger impact on the game in its current state than maybe it did when we were first establishing a pro scene. You could definitely argue that. I mean, at the time, the biggest RNG swings were things like Ragnaros hits and knife juggles, right? And now we've got literally a card that you just put in there and you go, okay, let's see what happens. And so there are definitely bigger RNG swings, I think, now. I definitely don't think, though, that you can't still make proper decisions and build decks properly and have a higher win rate than somebody else. It's just maybe there's more... maybe there's more landmines along the way, right? To win a tournament, you have to win a bunch of games, and it's more likely now to just get really unlucky in one match and then not be able to win the tournament than it used to be. I would definitely agree with that. But the second thing is arena balance is terrible, and that's the other circle jerk that goes on in the Hearthstone subreddit. And he directly said, we are on it. We have things. I wasn't going to say anything, but in a few weeks, or what do you say, a couple weeks, we're hoping to have something to share on this, which to me was the biggest takeaway from the whole thing.
Yeah, he even said, quote, we had plans for tools that would let us make changes in the medium to long term, and this is about arena balance, but the online discussion has made us stop and rethink our timelines and options. And he said that's great that the community has had that effect on them. I'm glad to hear that. And he said, hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll hear something.
I feel like we've seen this before, and I can't remember. I mean, they totally missed the mark on Priest, but I feel like sometime before that, it might have even been with Standard and the ladder changes. But I feel like he said that before, that basically it was something that they were, I think it was with actually bringing Standard mode to Hearthstone, something that they were looking at doing in a couple of years or, in the future, in the far-ish future, and because of the community discussion, they decided to move up their timelines. So I find it really interesting that the community can have that big of an impact on the timelines and the plans for the game on such just a huge scale.
Yeah, I think they just don't realize how important it is to some people, because the numbers to them, I'm sure, show them that it's a small percentage of players who actually play a lot of arena. But just because it's a small percentage doesn't mean that those players aren't incredibly passionate about it and sit and play the game a lot, right? So even if it's a small community, it's a community that matters. You think about Magic, and you could just ignore the players who like to play Vintage and Legacy and all the weird kind of stuff that's hard to get into. But those players are incredibly passionate about their version of, what their preferred format is. So I don't think you should ever just toss people aside because there's not as many of them, right? Especially in a game like Hearthstone where there's not that many buttons, and a new player comes in and is going to want to try them all out. And if Arena kind of sucks, that might be why there's not a lot of people playing it, right?
That's what I was going to say. I mean, and granted, this is all anecdotal because we don't have the inner numbers, but I think that's a safe assumption, Dills. I think they probably are seeing those numbers, and I would argue that the reason that Arena probably has a smaller percentage of players than Constructed is the fact that it receives a smaller percentage of care and attention from the development team, which is to say, I think it gets zero freaking attention.
At this point,
the only thing they
At this
do.
point, they made the rules, and now they just okay. Here comes the new cards. They go in.
Yeah, the only thing they do to make Arena special is omit cards that are coming into the game. And that is fine. It needs to happen because they have not learned that, hey, guys, you should give a shit about the rarity that's on your cards for an entire format of your game. But it's just, when was the last time anything special happened for Arena? And the answer is
for
never.
me, the problem really is that, and I still enjoy Arena, but I do find myself playing it a lot less. And I would argue that early on in this show, I consider myself more of an Arena player than a Constructed player. Yeah. And that has completely shifted. Because it's gotten to the point where when I don't need cards, what is my end goal with Arena? It's just this one run at a time thing, and when it's over, and I never think about it again, right? So I think that's really the problem, is that there's no season kind of standings, there's no seeing how I'm improving unless I'm using an outside tracker. There's just none of that. Nothing in the game feels like there's a linear progression from here to there, and I can get better at Arena, and it gets more rewarding. That it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So you just go in there, and after a while, you've done 1,000 Arena runs, and it's just less and less enticing to go in there. So that's, I think, what they really. There's a couple of things. Obviously, we've talked about the format, and Garrett and me and you have gone back and forth on what we think the format would be and what improvements could be made. But I also think more than that too. You just need something to make Arena players feel like they get a reward other than just the cards. And I know the cards are a big deal, but
and it's and obviously, because I start swearing the second I start talking about Arena, it's something I'm passionate about, and it's hard for me to stay objective about. And when if I do walk it back, if I do think about it, it is probably just an allocation of resources thing. Hearthstone had the biggest change up in the history of the game since launching this year, and I'm sure most of the resources went into figuring out Standard, how that's going to function, and the Old God set. And all of that has been nothing but positive for Hearthstone, the game, and for the community. But, now there's some distance between us and the launch of Standard. Now we're back to thinking about, well, how can we spread the love? Why can't Hearthstone have more than one competitive format?
Yeah.
Even if you don't...
the competitive limited formats, I think, are a huge deal, because...
Yeah, and
I play Magic with people who just never even... You could say they're like Arena Magic players, but they never even build a deck. They just do draft. And Gary, you're basically one of those people.
I've never played Constructed Magic, short of when I first started. I guess you could say I just took my buddy's deck and played it to learn the game. That's as close as I've come to Constructed Magic. I only play Limited Magic. Which is actually, I feel like you said you never build a deck, but that's what I like about Constructed or Limited Magic is the deck building.
You do build a deck,
and we hear from so many people, so many players of the game that come in, because you hear that all the time. I don't want a net deck, and I read that as it's like you're an Arena player and you just don't know it. Like, you just need to go play Arena, because that is where the game does, in a sense, reward you for deck building. Now there's balance issues, and Mage has been on top forever, and it would be nice if that isn't the case. But that's not the discussion I want to have right now. What I want to have is that there's a mode in the game right now that does reward good deck building and being creative given a certain set of tools. But the problem is that it's not getting enough attention from the actual developer.
Yeah, and the actual deck building itself, it feels a little gimped, because you just pick these 30 cards and then you go.
Yeah.
And you a lot of times you feel like I didn't get a chance to really build a deck. All I got a chance to do was hope for good cards and hope that my cards match up to the other guy's good cards, right? Because then you go in and all you're doing is you go up against a guy and you're like, how did this guy get this deck? Like, this is insane.
Yep.
And that's a bad feeling. You want to feel like you get to the end and then have some decisions to make, and right now it doesn't really feel that way. A lot of times it feels like, well, this is definitely the best of the three, and this is the other best of the three, and not, oh, well, because I have this card, I should take this card, but maybe this card because what if I end up getting this card? There's a lot of those decisions don't happen anymore. Now it's been boiled down so much to a tier list. This card is 85 and this card is 87, so I take the 87.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of become how it is.
Yeah.
And when you do a Magic draft, you end up like getting a card, and then you go like, okay, now I can build everything around this card, and everything I start to pick now goes down a path based on some of those early choices.
Yeah,
and Arena doesn't feel that way anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I was trying not to necessarily go down the
yeah,
hole of
the rabbit hole,
specific things we'd like to see happen. But yes, for the love of God, let us draft more cards than we play in a deck, please. Yeah. There's synergy is a huge thing in Hearthstone. So it's really debilitating to take a risky pick, to take a Murloc card at really any point, unless you were forced into nothing but Murlocs during your whole draft, and at the end you're like, oh hey, here's one that actually helps. But it would open things up. It would let you get creative. It would let you take a risk during draft, and you wouldn't just be able to literally sit there with a spreadsheet with numbers and go, well, this one's objectively better than that one, we'll go with this one. Yeah.
He did mention in his reply here that a lot of times we don't have access to the whole picture, but a counter to that argument is that they also don't have access to the whole picture, because they're like, they come at it from their point of view, and we come at it from our point of view. So the beauty of the whole thing that he wrote here was that they read this and then it fills in their picture, right?
Yeah.
And we don't get the other side of that, which is to see the numbers that they get to see and be a fly on the wall in their meetings. So we only ever get this half of the picture, but at least now there is this tool. And the beauty of, we complain about the Hearthstone subreddit and its circle jerky nature and all that kind of stuff, but the fact of the matter is, it is where the conversation about Hearthstone happens more than anywhere else on the internet. And so it is a very useful thing, and if it wasn't there, I would be sad, because I spend lots and lots of time on it. But it fills in their picture, right? So it is beautiful, and people do need to continue. I think really what I'd like to see is just, because we get some people who come to our subreddit and pose a question because they don't want to get bombarded with negativity, and they feel like doing that in the Hearthstone subreddit would open themselves up to that.
Yeah.
So that's the part that I wish would change about it. But the fact of the matter is, it's affecting the game. It's making things better. It's informing Ben Brode and the rest of Team 5. So it's ultimately a really good thing.
I agree. I'm excited to see what the heck they have planned for Arena, and how I'm sure it won't be good enough for me.
We'll find our faults, but it's our job to talk about it, right? So
well, you never know. I mean,
maybe I'll
know
love the
that,
hell out of it.
Yeah, we know that they listen, and we know that they're paying attention to Reddit, and I feel like whatever solution they've come up with is probably because they've had a lot of time now without making any changes to Arena. So I feel like they've heard us, they've heard what we want, and I would be surprised if the changes aren't good enough. I think that they're going to come out with something hopefully akin to standard, but for Arena, like that much of an impact. And I think that that's going to be really positive for Arena players. And, like constructed players are in such a good spot right now. We've got Wild, we've got Standard. There were huge changes. It's just like constructed has been on the radar for so long that ignoring constructed for a little while, it's kind of okay because we're good. Like Arena needs the attention now, and I think that whatever they announce in a couple of weeks, I think is going to have a big impact, and I think it's going to be a positive one.
I agree, and I
have faith in T5.
Yes, yeah, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, because they absolutely surprised me with Standard. I mean, we had been asked on the show before, how long do you think before they start cycling cards out of the set? And I was like, oh, probably another year or two at least. And instead, they announced Standard, like, all of this gone. To Wild it goes, and I couldn't believe it. I didn't think it was coming that quickly. They absolutely surprised me, and I think that's exactly what the game needed. And I've loved the fallout come post Old Gods and Standard. So bring it on, Team 5. Impress me again. So, well, before we switch gears and talk about some of the new decks that people are trying out in the wake of the fourth and final Karazhan wing, let's thank our patrons who are supporting the show over at patreon.com/TAC. We cannot thank you guys enough. It's the whole reason we get to do extra content. So this episode, let's thank Livingston P, Dimple, Hadoken D. God, I hope that's your real name. That's amazing. Dave, Tristan L, Stephen E, James P, and Bobby J. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. If you enjoy the Angry Chicken and want to support the three of us, go to patreon.com/TAC for more info. Now, let's move into this week's strategy segment.
Hit it very hard.
Wanna blow something up? Time to pay!
So, as we have for the last 3 weeks, we have some new decks to take a look at. If you're watching the video version, you'll see we'll be talking about Totem Shaman with Totemic Might, Burgle Rogue, which I'm extremely excited to see anyone is even attempting, and Control Mage, which I'm excited to hear about. Dills, you rounded these up for us. Let's start with the Totemic Might Shaman.
So this one has been kicking around a little while, but we haven't really gotten to it. The surprise about the Totemic Might Shaman was just that Totemic Might is a good card somehow in this deck, but also that Wicked Witch Doctor, which was the card that was added, actually has a deck that kind of it makes it go. So it's an interesting deck because it's built around just kind of flooding the board with your totems, but then you also end up leveraging your totems because of things like Primal Fusion, which gives your minion, you choose a minion +1/+1 for each of your totems on board, and Wicked Witch Doctor helps you just stockpile totems. But then, of course, also you've got Thunderbluff Valiant and Bloodlust as other ways to kind of leverage these totems. And I was actually surprised when I first saw this deck in action because just looking at it, it felt like, how are you ever going to find enough power to actually kill anybody here? How are you going to be able to trade up with these massive minions that, let's say you're playing against a druid and then they plop down to 5/10 and you don't have a hex. How are you going to ever get through a 5/10? And the surprising thing is that there's enough power in the cards like Thunderbluff Valiant, Bloodlust, Flame Tongue Totem, Rockbiter Weapon, Primal Fusion, all of those cards actually do help you get through. And, I thought the Witch Doctor was going to be just an awful card, and the deck you would build to make that card work would be terrible. But as it turns out, and I'm not saying this is not a tier 1 deck, but I've watched people playing this deck on stream. I've tried it a little bit myself, and it's surprising how much you can actually burst people out of nowhere, power through a lot of stronger minions. I mean, I've beaten Cthulhu warriors with this deck. Getting through 2 4/6s and getting through a bunch of 6/6s and 60 health and all of that, it really does actually have the tools to do that. So it's kind of surprising.
It has 8 cards that can potentially buff your minions, including attack power, not including Bloodlust. And that doesn't include Totemic Might either, because I was excluding that because it only gives health. So there's just so many options for you to draw into to utilize whatever minion you have on board, whatever random 1-drop you got off a Maelstrom portal. It's scary.
I can't believe that's in here.
Yeah. As a matter of fact,
the reason for that, though, is that because of Wicked Witch Doctor, and this is why Totemic Might's there, too, you need some cheap spells so that you can play Wicked Witch Doctor and then immediately start pumping out totems.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Totemic Might, that's why Maelstrom Portal is so good, because they're cheaper, right? So Lightning Storm, there's only one of. There's 2 Maelstrom Portals, right?
So, so you said you watched somebody playing this. Does Wicked Witch Doctor work in the way that if you cast Totemic Might, does it summon the totem and then the totem gets buffed, or does the spell happen before the totem comes?
So the totem gets buffed, and similar to like Thunderbluff Valiant, Inspire happens, the totem comes out, then that totem also gets buffed. Yeah. Okay. Because the Wicked Witch Doctor has the word whenever, right?
Right.
So you gotta always pay attention. Does it say whenever? Because if it says whenever, then they happen essentially at the same time.
Simultaneously.
It says after, then the spell effect happens, and the secondary effect would go off. So that's Wild Pyromancer, right?
Yeah. So it sequences in your favor in this regard.
Yeah. The other thing to note about Wicked Witch Doctor is that it doesn't care what totems you already have. So when you actually push the button, you can only get a totem that you don't already have, basic totem you don't already have, right? When you actually push the hero power button. But Wicked Witch Doctor just has random basic totem.
Yep.
It does. You can get 3 healing totems. You can get 3 spell power totems. That's the other weird thing about this deck. I was playing it, and I had a game where I had 2 healing totems on board for basically the whole game, and I just continued to trade, and none of my creatures ever died. It was crazy. I mean, it must have been so frustrating for the opponent just trying to kill my stuff and never being able to, because I just constantly would just kill this thing and then I heal up for 2. And not only that, everything heals for 2. And then I totemic mighted. And the other thing to note too is totem golem's a totem. So totemic might works on totem golem. So yeah, you just
Ugh, that's disgusting.
yeah. But totemic might has been sitting there since vanilla as just the laughing stock of a card, you know? And so it's cool to just see it find a place. And that's actually happened quite a bit since the release of Standard, really, was what allowed this to happen, is that you make a smaller card pool, and then when you try to make a deck that's maybe around a certain idea, you have to start hunting for cards that are actually going to work in there. And sometimes you end up with, Totemic Might is actually a good card. So pretty cool.
I find this deck really interesting because most of the cards, with like 3 exceptions, are actually shaman cards. You don't have to go very far outside the class to actually make this deck work, which I think is really, really cool, because the more kind of identity we have around the classes, I think the more interesting Hearthstone becomes. Then it really feels like, a shaman battling a rogue is something that's just 2 totally different powers going at it, which is very, very interesting to me as a player and as a viewer of big tournaments. Like, I want to see a very specifically shaman deck go up against a very specifically warrior deck. I think it's really, really cool. So the only neutral stuff we've got in here is Argent Squire and Barnes, and even Barnes is gonna pull you more shaman stuff. So I love it.
Don't really need Barnes here, but I think Barnes has decent synergy because, like, if you get a Wicked Witch Doctor off of Barnes, and you can immediately start using that Witch Doctor. If you get a Thunderbluff Valiant, you can immediately start using that and, strengthening your totems. So there's actually it's like a card that's not necessary here, but does work. I mean, Barnes just kind of works.
Flame Tongue Totem.
It's
great. Why not?
Yeah.
Get a Flame Tongue Totem. That's fine. Manatide Totem. Cool. I get to draw a card. Get an Argent Squire. Cool. It's just an Argent Squire.
An Argent Squire. It's a 1/1 with a shield.
Yeah, I'll take it. Why not? Yeah, no, I dig this card. I'm glad you brought up the double healing totem scenario too, because that's when I get excited. It's when something gets introduced that can bring upon a scenario that we never thought possible previously. Like, when have we ever found ourselves with 2 healing totems? Like,
yeah, to get 2 healing totems was nearly impossible.
You would have had to have one sent back to your hand and then generate another one.
Yeah, that was basically the way to do it. And now we've obviously got a couple different. I mean, just the card True Art, although nobody does that in Shaman, but you could. So yeah, there are ways to do it now. Also, multiple spell power totems and Maelstrom Portal. Oh man,
disgusting.
Yeah,
so gross.
Yeah. Real good. So yeah, so it's a good deck. I encourage if people are looking for a new form of Shaman, because I know aggro Shaman and mid-range Shaman haven't really changed much in a long time. So it's kind of cool to see something different. We had Bog Champ. So now Shaman has actually become kind of a fairly flexible class.
Yeah, they went
for a long time. They were not.
I'm so happy with Shaman this year. Like, if I will be surprised if at the end of 2016, if you ask me what class do you think had the best year, if my answer does not change from Shaman, because at the moment it's definitely Shaman. I mean, they went from the bottom of the barrel to being one of the most diverse classes in Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
They're the Drake of Hearthstone.
The Drake. Oh, Dills. Never change.
I was trying to do another music reference that Jocelyn would, I was like,
oh, I know that one.
Yeah, okay. All
okay.
right.
Yeah, just stick with objectively horrible music, and I guess Jocelyn might actually be able to
Hey,
for those that
missed
missed it, before we started the show, a Limp Bizkit reference was brought up, and Jocelyn's eyes lit up like the sun. She's like, I know them! I know Limp Bizkit! Sorry, Jocelyn.
Shut up, you guys.
Hey, no shame in your game, Joss. It's all good.
No shame.
You guys are really interested in seeing my total lack of music knowledge, then watch the most recent Current Geek, because Iceworm thought it would be funny to give me rapper trivia.
Oh, that sounds great.
Was how many times was 50 Cent shot one of the questions?
No, it was something about hype men or hype women was my category, and Scott told me, and I was like, what? And he's like, uh-oh. She doesn't even know what the category is.
So did you have to know the names of a hype man for a rapper or something like that?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. That's actually pretty tough, even if you're into, even if that's like a thing you're into.
Yeah.
His rap.
And then at some point, I thought he said Josie, so I said the Pussycats, and he said Josie, which is not the same.
Yeah, Joe C. Period. Yeah. See, I think after Flava Flav, I would be lost. I think that's the only hype man I know.
And yeah, that was actually one of the questions. But yeah, so if you think that might be funny, then check out Current
This
Geek.
sounds
Nice.
hilarious.
Nice. Well, let's come back to the world of Hearthstone and talk about Nostum's Burgle, like aggro rogue.
Yeah. This is a cool version of the Burgle Rogue. So the thing about the Burgle Rogue, and similar to the problem that Priest had for a long time, Milkshake, Priest, so fun to play. But all you're ever doing is hoping that you get good stuff and that the opponent plays things that you can then take and things like that. So there's a lot of games where you just feel like there's just no way to win this game, right? And that was the problem I was having with Burgle Rogue. I was putting, you put in the Swashbuckler, you put in the Undercity Huckster, you put in Burgle, and then you put in the Ethereal Peddler, and then you need to get good cards from your opponent and then make them cheaper, and then those allow you to win the game. So what this deck does is take those elements and then wrap it in an aggro rogue package, right? So you can just outright win the game because you play a lot of cheap minions and you cold blood them and you hit them in the face. That's a way you can win. But it has the added little benefit of being able to also win through hilarity and stealing the other guy's cards. So it's really, really fun. I haven't messed around with it too much, but the version that I was originally toying with, that was the problem, is that if you burgled bad cards, you just couldn't win the game. You just ran out of damage. Your opponent just killed all your minions, and then you just try to dagger him in the face 18 times in a row or something. There's just no win condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this deck actually has that win condition of just being super aggressive. It's got Leroy, Argent Horse Rider, Abusive Sergeant, like I said, the Cold Bloods, Defiance Ringleader. You can get really quick starts and just kind of out-tempo your opponent. And then you can also get some sweet cards through the Burgle method and have some fun at the same time. So pretty cool concept. Nostum is kind of well known for creating meme decks that actually kind of work. So this is another one. And definitely I was excited to see what some of the pro players were going to come up with around this concept. This is probably going to be something that you're going to have fun with and feel like you can actually win with. So that's a good way to do that kind of thing. Like when I do the Milkshake Priest, I should probably temper my milkshaking a little bit, but I don't.
You gotta win because your opponent just laughed too much and missed their turn, man. That's
It is the most satisfying way to win in Hearthstone, though, is to just play the craziest stuff ever and have it work. That is for sure very satisfying. But when you go like 1-7 and that 1 was really cool, but the 7 still crushed your soul, then you go, all right, let's try to make the deck actually good around this problem.
the best feeling is.
I will say that this deck actually does work at rank 20. So
Yeah?
yeah.
Nice.
Yep, I played this, and yeah, there were a couple of people that seemed to be very confused, but man, that Swashbuckler is so fun.
Yeah.
His name is Swashbuckler.
It's also cool, yeah. It's also cool to have, you've got Buccaneer, Bladed Cultist. You got lots and lots of ones here. Argent Squire, Abusive Sergeant. So you feel like you just get a good start, and you just get off to the races quickly. And that's, it's, and then the card draw is all drawing your opponent's cards, right?
Yes, exactly.
You draw only one of your cards a turn, but sometimes you draw multiple cards from the other guy's class, and then cool things can happen. So.
I played a mirror match, and so I was getting rogue cards, which then was even better because I was a rogue already. So yeah, I was just like, this is great. But then
wow, these
obviously
synergize great.
yeah, exactly. But then the peddler doesn't work. But
damn.
Yeah.
So let me tell you the other version of this that I originally started with. I'm actually going to pull up my tracker so I can look at it. Basically, I went all in on this strategy of only using other people's cards. So I even had, I had like everything in there. Do I even have it? Okay, here we go. Burgle. So I had, where is it? I had Nefarian, Grand Crusaders, Nexus Champion Sarad.
Oh my god.
I was basically like any card that says give me an opponent's card, that's in. that's going in.
Listen,
so Grand Crusader is a paladin card, and then you make it cheap.
You got a lot of style points, Stills, but I'm going to go with Nostrum here.
Yeah, it didn't work very well. It did not work very well. But it was super fun and memey. But yeah, Grand Crusader is just a good card, though. Actually, I mean, it's a 5/5 for 6, which is kind of bad, but it just gives you a card. So I don't know. I actually did okay with that card in particular, but the rest of it was I needed the ability to be aggressive as well.
Oh, cool. Well, let's round things up and talk about Strife Crow's Control Mage deck, which the name alone is enough to get me excited. Dude, when Hearthstone first came out and I started playing Mage, I was like, oh, it should be Control because they have so many removal spells that could either go face or hit minions, and it never really took off. Never really worked.
We had a Fatigue Mage for a while that was a very controlling Fatigue Mage, but that's just, if you hate life and fun, then you can play a deck like that. But if you enjoy also having a good time, I think a deck like this is a little bit more everyone's speed here. So yeah, it's got a lot of fantastic tools for dealing with the board and just kind of outlasting your opponent, right? And then of course the Medivh's Valet was the big new card that was in here because if you have double Ice Block stays up for a long time, meaning that Medivh's Valet is just kind of activated, you know. So it's whichever deck you put Medivh's Valet in, which I was playing it in Freeze Mage, and it was pretty good there too. It just gave you like more frost bolts essentially, right?
Yeah.
In this deck, it works very well with even just the 2 ice blocks because, you can just play it on turn 2, but it's just extra removal. It's one more piece of removal, and of course, this deck also has the things like the Arcane Blast. It's got the Frost Nova Doomsayer combo, and all that kind of stuff. But then it also has Medivh, which I think is really fun here. So you can win the game just by kind of outlast, then burn them down with some burn spells after you Alexstrasza them, or you can end up doing some big giant tempo swings with Medivh later on, and it's pretty fun. This is a deck that can actually get away with doing Medivh stuff because you will have time to play Medivh. I think the problem with Medivh is by turn 8, can I afford to just play a 7/7 and do nothing else? Not necessarily. Sometimes you do that and then they just kill you the next turn, right? But when you have Ice Block up, you definitely can. You have time. You can play Medivh, and then you can start dropping like Kabbalist Tomes or Flame Strikes and just summoning massive minions, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, lots and lots of cool stuff in a deck like this. I feel like a deck like this, every game is going to feel very different from the game before it, which I find really fun about these slower control decks. Strife Crow's kind of the master of that too. That's his. I was watching a stream the other night. And he was just saying like, I just sometimes I have to play aggro, but if I just had my way, I would always just play either mid range or slow control decks. That's his style. So he makes it work. And if you're looking for a deck like that, if people out there, and I know a lot of people tend to say they like this type of deck more, definitely give this one a try. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, this is I think the deck that of the 3 decks we covered today, this is the one I want to go and play the most after talking about it.
Yeah, it's just super fun to have that kind of style where you just are like constantly solving a little puzzle. Every turn it's like solving a little puzzle. A lot of times you're planning out to get a really big value turn maybe 2 turns later. So you start to kind of manage the board rather than clear it. You're just kind of, okay, I'll just ping this guy to set up my Flame Strike so that then I can do some big stuff later. There's a lot of the turns are definitely thinkers though. You're gonna have to spend some time figuring out what the best play is because it won't always be obvious.
Yeah, I think all the decks in we covered today, they have little puzzles. I mean, we talked about Totem Shaman. Well, okay, what do I do with 2 healing totems? Oh, cool, I get to trade indefinitely. Yeah. Or, okay, I'm going to play this. Hopefully I get my second spell power totem, but if I don't get that, how do I deal with the board? Obviously, Burgle Rogue, very obvious. What do I do with other classes cards?
With other classes cards,
yeah. And Control Mage, like you just said. So I'm man, pretty. I know I went on a tirade about Arena again, but I'm pretty happy with Hearthstone right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. So real quick, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just kind of wanted to point out a couple cards that now that the all of the wings are out, cards that I think surprised people a little bit in one way or the other. And I think the biggest one for me was Menagerie Warden didn't seem to make Beast Druid a crushing thing. Like it didn't just take over, right?
No, it's
saw for a while, and then it just kind of dissipated.
Yeah, it's slow. And I think it's as slow as it should. It's what we said a lot while reviewing Old Gods cards. It's balanced, surprisingly, which we didn't think about Menagerie Warden when first looking at it. We're like, oh my god, this is.
It looked broken good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you actually see it in action, and you go, oh, okay, well, okay. First you have to play a tiger, and then you have to do this. So I have time to react to that, and yeah. So I don't, that card I think a lot of people thought was going to be this kind of meta changing, game breaking card. Just didn't really turn out that way. Wicked Witch Doctor, we just talked about it. It's better than I think anybody thought. That card looked pretty bad. And then I think Ivory Knight for me was the other card where I didn't really think that was going to have much of an impact, but it really kind of rounds out the tool set that like an Azoth Paladin needs, right? Which is one more card where you feel like you're being proactive in the mid game. You're playing a 6-mana 4/4, but you're healing and drawing a card. It's just like you're doing so many things in one. And so that card is just like a nice tool to just throw into the tool bag, right? And you just, okay, against this matchup, against aggro, I just take the biggest spell and heal the most. Against this guy, I don't really care about healing. I just play it on 6 and then pick whatever card might help me in this current situation. It's a really, really cool card. And I didn't think it was going to be bad, but I definitely didn't think it was going to be, as good as it has proven to be. So,
yeah.
You guys have any that kind of surprised you one way or the other?
I'd go with Moonglade Portal and Maelstrom Portal.
Yeah,
the Maelstrom Portal I didn't expect. Yeah, that's
Silver
true.
Moon's still bad though.
Yes.
Firelands Portal we knew was going to be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, Maelstrom Portal I think a lot of people expected to not do much. Outside of that, I'm not sure. I guess Barnes we expect to be good. Arcane Giant we expected to be good. The Priest cards you could say definitely did surprise a lot of people.
I think Barnes was better than I thought because I know when he was revealed, we were like, well, probably not in every deck, but oh man, there's a lot of homes for Barnes. He's
I thought
welcome.
He was
in
more
many
of like
decks.
the meme card, but he turns out to just be like kind of an auto include in a lot of decks that just have.
Just solid.
If you're running Sylvanas, you should probably just run Barnes just in case you get a free Sylvanas, right? So, yeah.
Priest of the Feast and Onyx Bishop.
I guess that was the only real big surprises. I still haven't played around enough with like Violet Illusionist or any of that stuff. Bookworm, I think, is maybe like a card that might surprise people at some point, but yeah, it's interesting to see like what cards are surprises. I think it was BlackRock where we had our first like, oh really? Because nobody really saw the patrons being as crazy as they turned out to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Nax we didn't really have that much of a moment because all the good cards just looked good. Sludge Belcher looked good from the moment you saw it, right? And yeah, so but since then we've had a lot of these weird little surprise moments. I'm still waiting for a card to really kind of come out of nowhere and take everything by storm. So
I think that's coming though, because again, we haven't had very much time to actually sit and play around and see what works and see what doesn't. Like theory crafting's one thing, but it's totally different when you actually, get it out there in the wild. And I think Menagerie Warden is a perfect example of that. Everyone, like all the pros, thought it was going to be pretty much game breaking, and then when you actually see it in action, it's not as powerful as they originally thought. So I think we just need to take a few weeks and try to figure some things out, and we might still be surprised by some of the decks that come out of this.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's weird because I thought that Beast Druid was going to be all over the competitive scene, but everyone was playing freaking Malagos Yogg Druid.
Well, yeah, and I think that's partly the problem is that Yogg Druid in whatever form is just so powerful, and I think Beast Druid is better as a more kind of flood the board, really super hyper aggressive deck. So I think that Menagerie Warden just doesn't fit in Beast Druid, which is kind of counterintuitive. I think it's better, in more of a traditional rampy style Druid, and that's just not very popular right now because, I mean, if you can, copy your Druids of the Claws with your Menagerie Warden, then that's great. And so I think that's more where it fits, and I don't think a lot of people have experimented with that because Yogg. So
sure. Yeah,
as
why
long
would
as
you not play this version?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's the problem. Again, Druid has fallen into this, like, there's one super ridiculously powerful Druid deck, and so everything else is kind of fallen by the wayside. So
yeah, when we're this close to new cards being added to the game, I personally don't like look as closely at tournaments because I just don't think you're going to see something that surprises you that much this close to new cars being added.
They're probably not going to be taking the type of risks that you're going to be seeing on the ladder.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Sure.
I always this is when I pay a lot more attention to fan sites like Hearthhead and Hearthpwn and seeing what regular Joes they like, because everyone's I feel like a lot of players who are on ladder who aren't tournament players, they're just trying to catch a wave. And you can get lucky. You can stumble across something that no one knows how to deal with yet, and you can ride that wave to legend. And I'm always interested in finding what those waves are. So that's why I'm always keeping tabs on what's been upvoted on Hearthhead and Hearthpwn. And there's just been a lot of interesting things. Like I really enjoyed the week 1. I really enjoyed just mid-range shaman that was running some of the new Karazhan cards. That was a lot of fun. It's probably not the best deck right now, but during that 1 week, that was a good time. Mm-hmm. So
it's definitely true. I'm pretty sure the pros are all working out some of these decks, but they just don't have a build they feel comfortable with yet. Yeah. So it'll probably be in a few weeks. I think we'll start seeing some of this stuff at some of the bigger tournaments, which will be cool.
Absolutely. Well, let's move to our inbox and kick things off with a crazy game story.
Has the whole world gone crazy?
You're in trouble now.
You got it!
You can send your crazy game stories and other emails to tacpodcast@gmail.com. Our story today comes to us from JR, who writes, "So there I was. Things were looking dire indeed. That butler of Medivh's had opened the wrong portal, and his blunder had cost me over half of my life. But I have this under control, for I am Rexar, and I am a hunter. Now, with Medivh rescued and the party as well, I stare down the puny prince of princes, Malchezaar. As impossible as it sounds, my enemy has me on my heels. This is an emergency. Time to break Yogg. First spell, nothing. Second spell, nothing. Fifth spell, lock and load. Useful, but not enough. 10th spell, destroys my allies. I think to myself, I swear to you, you stupid old god, that if you don't do something right, I will end you myself. 14th spell, running out of time. Then it happens. Malchezaar, with 17 health remaining, gets hit straight in his smug little face with a sacrificial pact. Victory! Holy shnikes.
I like this one because it was an adventure crazy game story, and we don't get very many of those. Most of them come from ladder, so
no, we don't.
Yeah, I like this one.
We typically leave out Yogg stories too. I'm assuming an exception was made for the fact that, oh my god, you killed Malchezaar with sacrificial pact.
By the way,
your 14th spell,
I wonder if you don't get it with Yogg, if you actually just try to put sacrificial pact in your deck to play heroic Malchezaar, because sometimes in the adventures they'll try to do something. They'll say that card is not allowed in this adventure.
Yeah, that was.
I wonder if they would say no, you can't do that. So
Alex Straza in, I think it was one of the BlackRock fights.
Yeah, who had like 90 health or whatever.
Yeah,
15. They're like, nope.
And you don't even get the 8/8. It just gets destroyed. You cheater, and you lose your turn.
All right, some science must be done.
Yeah, I'm really glad that they do that, by the way, because, oh man, would it be, especially if they're keeping it wild, would it be hard for them to make unique encounters?
Mm-hmm.
See, people in chat are saying it won't work. Okay.
Doesn't work in heroic.
Chat
it won't work unless Yogg casts it. That's great story. Thank you, JR.
Well, that makes it even better.
Sweet.
Literally the only way for this to happen.
Eat it, Yogg, or not Yogg. Eat it, Malchezaar. Eat that sacrificial pact.
Also eat it, Yogg, because he normally does eat it.
No, I'll be saying that in a year and a half when he falls off. We're gonna have a going away party for Yogg Saron. Unless he gets nerfed before then.
That's that long away. That's that far away, dude. That's
I'm sticking to my guns, guys. I really want him to go to wild as is, untouched, but it feels like it's going to be a really long time. That's a long time to deal with current Yogg.
Yeah,
can't lie. Anyways, let's round the show up with some regular emails.
Hello.
Hello, it's me.
Hello.
Just quickly, did you get my message?
Yep.
Oh.
Hello, brother.
You can send your emails to the same place, tacpodcast@gmail.com. Roberto writes in and says, "Greeting my ruffled, feathered friends. Greeting tongue-tied host. My question is, do you ever think we will get a specific search mechanic? I know Discover gives you a choice of 3, but I came from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Where there are minions that, if destroyed by battle, they would allow you to search through your deck for a minion that fit a certain criteria. For example, has to be of a certain tribe/type and only have a certain attack power or lower. I think this would really help combo decks in a meta that favors the aggro archetype. P.S. I always listen until the end. Job's done. This would be cool to see, Roberto. There's search cards in Magic as well. Dills, I'm interested to get your thoughts because I don't think it's. I think it's dangerous in Hearthstone. I understand it in a game like Magic where you have to fill out almost half of your deck with cards like land, which do nothing other than enable you to play other type of cards. So I think you kind of need the search mechanic there. I'm not sure it's as necessary in a game of Hearthstone where every single card you draw, you could potentially play if you just make it to a certain turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, the issue in Hearthstone is, like you said, most of the time we see this in Magic, it is searching for something like land. Fetch lands are a huge deal because you can find the right type of land for the situation that you need, the cards that are in your hand and that kind of stuff. And without that in Hearthstone, it's not as needed. I also think that there might be some danger when you have it might limit the types of cards that they feel comfortable creating because, think about a Reno deck being able to search for Reno. Mm-hmm. That changes everything about how a Reno deck plays. Currently, the drawback of Reno is that it's hard to get to Reno because you only have one of everything. And so that's what limits it to make it somewhat balanced. And if a card like that was just able to be pulled out whenever you needed it, you're like, oh man, I'm getting beat down by aggro. Guess I better hunt for my Reno and then just play my Reno. So there might be some issues there. I think you'll still see, this mechanic always kind of have that discover thing attached to it or some sort of, right now you could say the curator kind of hunts for a specific card because you put one Murloc in there and,
Then that's going to pull that one Murloc. There's also the Harbinger, I think. Ancient Harbinger. If it lives, it pulls a 10 mana cost card. So again, it's close, but still technically random if you have more than one 10 cost card. But I mean,
the way it works in Magic, you literally turn your deck over and
look.
You find the one you want, and then you pull it out, and then you reshuffle. So in Hearthstone too, I think there'd be a UI issue where they'd have to flip over your whole deck, and you have to scroll through, and
Yeah. Or it'd have to be the search, like you search your collection, like you'd have to type in what you're looking for or something.
And when you're playing on your phone, so there are some limitations of reasons why this doesn't happen in Hearthstone. Mm-hmm. That being said, I would like to see more of this type of thing just wrapped up in a Hearthstone package, right? So the way we do it now with things like Discover, like Jocelyn pointed out, the Harbinger, the way Curator works, I think those types of ways to do this action are a good way to handle that in Hearthstone. So they are kind of doing it correctly now, but more of it. I like it. I like that idea of building a card to help me do something specific, because then it's not all about, I just play minions on curve. There's actually other types of decks that become possible and viable.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. And it's not, also the other thing, Hearthstone hasn't really had an issue with combo decks in the past. I mean, Miracle Rogue, goodness gracious, you basically draw your whole darn deck. Which is another thing to consider as well. Mm-hmm. But I think it's always going to take on the form of something like tracking or something like Discover, where it is randomized to a certain degree where it can't be too abusive to your opponent.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I agree with that. It's the way that it works in Hearthstone too, with only 30 cards in your deck. You don't have to do it as much. With 60 cards in your deck, it's a lot less likely to draw very specific cards. You kind of need these mechanics a little bit more. So
I run them in my 40-card limited decks too.
Yeah, well, but think about it in Hearthstone. If you really wanted to draw through your whole deck with almost any class, you can do that. You just put in tons and tons of draw. The reason we don't do that is because not all the decks try to, get to a combo. A lot of the decks you don't need card draw because you play one card a turn, right? And you just play the card that costs the amount of mana you have that turn, and then you just draw the next card. It's fine. You get lots of value out of the cards you do have. So it just depends, the type of deck that if you wanted to build a deck that drew the whole deck, you could probably do it in every single class.
Yeah. Next email, Dills?
Yeah, this one comes from Sandy, says, "Dear Angry Chicken." So just to all of us as a whole, a singular Angry Chicken.
We have become
last
one.
week- yes, we are one. We are one Angry Chicken. Last week you guys mentioned that you hope no more Inspire cards are printed. Did we say that?
I believe I made
Garrett
a
did, yeah.
passing joke about how it was pretty horrendously ineffective, and
Sure. And it made me kind of sad. Inspire never worked out much, and Inspire decks are pretty weak in general, but I still think there's something cool about the idea. Playing around with Nexus Champion can be crazy good fun, and I'm always excited when I get it or Kodo Rider from a random card effect. I was hoping, with Standard coming in, that Inspire deck might become viable, but it never happened. Why do you think it never worked out, and do you think it could ever work if they refined it, or future expansions made some faster cards? So the reason it didn't work out really is because there weren't enough of them, to be honest. You couldn't really make an Inspire-themed entire deck, you know? But that being said, they did work out fairly well in Arena. When TGT first came out, Kodo Rider was definitely considered a good card to take in Arena because come turn 8, you make 2, 3, 5s, and they have to deal with the first one or else it continues to spawn more. That was a big problem. And I could think of a few more too. The one that gets bigger every time you goes +2/+2 every time you use your hero power. That was also a very good card in Arena. So the problem with Constructed is you didn't often have turns where you could play it. Say if it was a 5-mana card and you need to also hero power, you couldn't play it then hero power. You couldn't really wait till turn 7 to do something like that. So, but if you had more of them, there might be a deck that can actually utilize it. But there's just only 15 of them or something like that.
yeah, it's. I think it's correlated to the speed of the game, and Hearthstone is relatively fast. And this isn't me getting on the ye old bandwagon of aggro's killing the game. There's too much aggro. Kill aggro. Oh my god. It's just Hearthstone in general. Even your control decks, you're still, like you say, you're usually, and a lot of times if you're curving out correctly, you play one card and you pass. So cards with battle cries are generally considered very powerful because they do something the turn they are played. And so with Inspire, you were trading off the ability of just playing the card, doing something when it lands, to having to play around the fact that you're having to consider, well, do I want to play this with 2 extra mana, which means I'm playing an underpowered minion later in the game so that I can get some value off of the Inspire. So the what it did for that Inspire and for that cost that you were paying, which is not only 2 more mana, but waiting 2 more turns, it had to be doing something incredible.
It had to be really, really good. Exactly. Yeah. And when your option is to play cards like Tyrion or play cards like Confessor Paletress, right? It's like, that's a good legendary, right? Yeah. And then Paletress, you're like, I hope this is good. And so it's like that's where those cards just don't really see plays because, like you said, even the control decks, there's still a relative, there's an amount of speed that just kind of happens in Hearthstone, right? Where only Warrior can really get away with armor passing. And nobody else can really kind of pull that off because they have such tools to catch back up.
Yeah.
Everybody else, you kind of I got to do something every turn or else I'm just way too far behind. So
and to a certain degree, I was making a joke last week. I was just kind of being hyperbolic. I love ripping on TGT because it was a horrendously boring expansion by all accounts.
I would not mind seeing more Inspire cards printed. I would just they need to be good. They need to do something impactful.
And I was definitely
and I think that was the thing. We didn't really get enough of them, like you mentioned, Dills, because you do need the ability to almost split the Inspire cost across cards. If you have 2 or 3 on board at a time, then that 2 mana that you're paying is actually going to do 2 or 3 things plus actually hero power. So then, you're starting to split that cost, and it's not like a 5-drop becomes a 7-drop. It's like, okay, well, my 3, 4, 5 drops also have a half a mana cost tied to them to do their effect. So I think that we needed more to be more viable in more decks, and they just didn't double down on it like they should have.
There weren't the right types of Inspire either. I don't think. Imagine if you had, say, a 4-mana 3/2 that came out with a Divine Shield, and then every time you inspired, it got a Divine Shield again, right? Mm-hmm. Then you could play it, and it would be hard to kill it, and then it would just be really hard to kill it forever, and that type of thing might actually have a big enough effect on the board to be good. Yeah. But instead, we had these cards like Kodo Rider, which was okay, wait till turn 8, play it hero power, even if you don't really need the hero power, so that you can get another 3/5. and then they just kill the first 3/5, and now you just have a 3/5. So on turn 8, you made 2 3/5s, which isn't actually that great. It's the threat of the more 3/5s coming later. So you needed more cards that like had some survivability to them, right? And they just didn't. They were like, yeah, here on turn 5, play a 4/4, and then hope it lives until turn 6, or wait till and that's the problem.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean the more effects that you get, or the more survivability that those Inspire cards have, the more likely they are to snowball. So it could potentially be a very problematic mechanic, which I think is why we didn't see it go crazy big, and it almost felt like Blizzard was
scared.
like testing it, to see like how snowbally can this get, and here's a few. How's this going to go? And so I think if they had gone too crazy into it, then we could have been in a real bad spot.
It's like limited by its own potential, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But the example that you used, Sandy, of Nexus Champion Sarad was, I think, one of the cards that actually did see play, because
we talked about
it was a decent card, and it was a threat that had to be dealt with, or else it went out of control.
And we talked about the Temic Might Shaman just minutes ago, which has running Thunder Bluff Valiant. Plenty of other mid-range shamans have been running Thunder Bluff Valiant for quite a while now. It's one of my favorite decks right now, and Thunder Bluff Valiant is one of the reasons I like it so much. So I definitely wasn't saying that there were no Inspire cards that worked. Hell, there's a Joust. There was one Joust card that sometimes sees play, King Zelik, and Joust was even worse than Inspire. But no, it was just rip it on him, man. Let me give you the DNA of Salt. TGT was announced. We saw all the cards. We got a brawl leading up to the launch of it, and it was Joust versus Inspire. And we're like, oh my god, they're going deep into this. And then it came out, and most of the cards were terrible.
Yeah.
So
they're also terrible in the era of Nax and GVG. To be fair, but
that's a really good point to bring up. Actually, anecdotal. Not sure this is actually the fact. But when I look at TGT, I look at a team trying to rein in power levels, but without bringing in the standard wild split that they brought in with Old Gods. It was just ineffective.
Sure, yeah. It essentially just made the entire expansion nearly useless at the time, which was kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, which was quite sad. But man, I love the whole idea behind the Grand Tournament too.
Mm-hmm.
Got such a nice bit of just whimsy, and it was a catch-all. Like doing the Grand Tournament, let them just pull from all corners of Warcraft. They didn't have to stick with one specific theme. Really dug it.
I think we've actually talked about TGT more in this episode than we did like when it launched.
It makes
we
sense,
talked about
right?
the art, we talked about the mechanics.
We're at the end of Karazhan now, so we're looking retrospectively. Because obviously the question is, well, how effective has Karazhan been? And I think we agree we can't really answer that question yet. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely had me thinking about everything that's come before it and been like, well, if TGT is our barometer for the least effective group of cards that's ever been added to the game, and Naxxramas is the other side of that pendulum, which, oh my god, almost every card had a massive effect on the game, where does Karazhan fall? That's where my brain's been. So. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Sandy, thank you for the email, and thank you for calling me out on my hyperbolic BS. Jocelyn, final email.
This one comes to us from Matt, who says, well met, foul-tempered foul. I have been playing Hearthstone since beta, and what drew me to it first was the laid-back, easy-to-pick-up vibe of the game. However, what kept me interested were the various characters and creatures that had a large amount of lore behind them, like Malfurion, Ragnaros, Thrall, etc. I always wanted to learn more about Hearthstone's backstory, and I knew just how to do it. Enter Legion! I picked up the game for the first time last week when it released, and have been gorging on the epic lore and questing content ever since. Even though I'm a WoW noob, I love interacting with characters like Malfurion and Prophet Velen, especially when they say the exact lines that they do in Hearthstone. Hearing Malfurion say, nature must be preserved, puts a big old smile on my face every time. Not to mention seeing a certain gentlemanly Murloc now and then. Anyway, just wanted to know if you guys think it's common for people to get really into WoW after playing Hearthstone. Love the show and keep up the good work. You guys are awesome. So obviously I'm in a very crazy WoW headspace right now. So I saw this question and I was just like, yes, like I'm so happy to hear that there are people who start in Hearthstone and move to Warcraft and not the other way around, because so many of the people in my sphere are the other way, are Warcraft people and then got into Hearthstone. So I don't know. Do you guys think that the characters in Hearthstone are enough to pull people into Warcraft?
I'm sure it has happened.
But clearly
I know
it happened with
plenty
one
of people
person.
who
at
it
least.
hasn't happened though too.
Yeah.
Lots of the like pros say, "Oh no, I never played WoW. I'm not going to play WoW." Like I've heard Frodan talk about it. I think Raynad's talked about it. Like, no, we just don't. But yeah, like there's so much cool stuff going on, and these characters are obviously pretty fleshed out characters, right? So when you see them and you hear them, they have lines and dialogue and cool entrances, and so definitely, if I didn't play WoW before, I would be definitely interested in it after playing Hearthstone. Yes.
And at least be morbidly curious. And it's like when WoW came out, I heard about people who were going back and playing the RTSs. And I think any game that, or you can expand this to really any media. It's like if you are watching Walking Dead, some people have definitely picked up the comics because of the show. Some people have definitely picked up the show because of the comics, and so on and so forth. I will say to Matt, if he just started playing, those NPCs didn't always used to quote Hearthstone. More influence from Hearthstone into World of Warcraft, because they used to have their own.
Because that was totally going to be my question, because as I've been questing through Legion, I have come across people who are in Hearthstone, and they have said things like, God, Ysera gave me goosebumps when she did the whole, I dream and the world trembles. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
so good. So I didn't realize that was, because I haven't had too many interactions with a lot of these characters previously, just coming to WoW so late. So I didn't realize that like every time you saw Malfurion, because I don't think I've really seen him in game, that he didn't say nature must be preserved. So that's really cool to know that there's more influence from Hearthstone over to Warcraft.
Yeah, and Jaina was screaming her Hearthstone quotes during the scenario, and there's a lot of that, and that wasn't always necessarily the case. I can't speak to Malfurion because honestly I don't remember. I don't think we really saw him until Cataclysm.
I think he was sleeping.
Yeah, he was sleeping
like
before
actually
that.
legitimately sleeping.
He was legitimately, yes, he was in the dream, but like he never really showed up.
There's a lot of characters that weren't. I mean, right now on my hunter quest, I'm hunting for what's her name, the alternate hunter in Hearthstone.
Illyria.
Illyria.
Illyria. Yeah, I'm like hunting for her.
Yeah.
Right? And like she hasn't been in the game. Like she's been MIA for like forever. So yeah, a lot of those characters are kind of re-emerging, and they were characters that were a big deal for a long time. But I remember like when I first started playing WoW, like a guy like Gul'dan wasn't everywhere like he is now. Yeah. Now he's friggin' everywhere.
Well, dude, I mean,
he was dead.
That's true.
That's a very good point.
Like his skull was in places, but yeah.
Specifically Illidan's hand.
Yep.
Just talking to it like, how you doing, buddy?
Cyclical nature of WoW. Like, spoiler alert, by the way. So first Gul'dan was dead and Illidan had his head. Now Illidan is dead and Gul'dan's back. And
He's not quite dead. He's almost dead. He's near dead.
It's okay, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's half dead. I don't know what terminology you would use, but yeah, it's very strange. Illidan used to be alive holding Gul'dan's skull. Now Illidan's almost dead, and Gul'dan is alive holding him in a giant green Jolly Rancher. Yeah, WoW seems to work in cycles. So
time's a flat circle, bro.
Time is a flat circle. Yeah. Nice.
That's cool, man. Well, thank you everyone for your emails again. Send them to tacpodcast@gmail.com. That will bring us to the end of the Angry Chicken. If you couldn't tell, I think Jocelyn is about to jump out of her skin and go play more World of Warcraft, so we should probably let her go do that. Dills needs to catch up because I need a dungeon buddy. And so thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks again to our badass patrons supporting us at patreon.com/TAC. Thank you to our producers, Declan H. and Peter Williams. You guys are awesome. Also, thank you if you are dropping us 5-star iTunes reviews. That helps the show out quite a bit. Let's thank another guy 6, not 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Another guy 6. Thank you very much. Who said, well done, delirious dinosaur descendants. Benito R., who wrote, last week, my internet dads, Dills and Garrett, taught me how to shave. Harrys.com, use the code TAC, get $5 off a Truman starter set. Check it out.
Nice.
And thank you to Will A. Carpenter, who said we are the best all caps Hearthstone podcast. Really appreciate it, guys. Follow the show on Twitter at TAC Podcast. Get our swag over at bit.ly/amove store. You can get t-shirts at shirts.amove.tv. Check those out. And you can catch us live every Tuesday night at 4 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/amovetv or on the alphageekradio.com. If you're traveling, if you need a mobile live stream, you can check that out. Dills, where can folks find you?
You can check out the stream, twitch.tv/WillieDillsSF, youtube.com/WillieDillsSF as well. And Twitter, I'm at Willie Dills. I've been away for a week, and then we had family stuff yesterday, but there should be streams the rest of this week. That's the plan anyway, unless things go horribly wrong. Oh, and tomorrow, fingers crossed, I'm going to look at a puppy.
What? Dills is getting a dog.
We may have
I
puppy
saw that
appearances
tweet
on
and
the
I was
stream.
like,
Yeah.
yes, do it.
Mm-hmm. So excited about that. So you can find me walking a puppy, hopefully, very soon.
So much puppy love. I'm excited.
Dills is going to get a dingo.
It's actually, no, I'm going for an American Blue Heeler mix. I don't know if you guys are.
I have
No
no idea what that
I'm
is.
just
So
excited
they're
for
like-
adorable puppy pictures.
Yeah, well, generally they're like Australian, like sheepdog type things, like cattle dog, sheepdog. So
Oh, those are
they're
beautiful.
very good at
Bigger
the
dogs?
herding and stuff. Yeah, and apparently they're super smart and really loyal, but they need to be trained and walked quite a bit. Like you got to get them out for exercise. But this is fine because I work from home, so
Oh, yeah.
lots of walks. Yep.
So there'll be stream breaks. So they're just, you have to come up with a
Yeah.
graphic. It's
Sorry,
like,
stream. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Gotta walk the dog.
yeah, dog walking time. You need some like really cheesy intermission music. It'll be great.
I'm just looking at the chat room right now. Don't let Twitch name your dog, please.
Don't let Twitch name my dog.
Oh,
No.
I don't know.
I was
I'm
thinking. So here's my thought. My original thought was Rexar, Rex for short.
Rex. Yeah, that's
I
pretty
like
good.
that.
Yeah, but I need to meet him first, and then I'll get a sense of what his name is supposed to be.
Well, don't do what I did, because one time I named a cat Arthas, and he opened my hand up with his claws. So he lived
turned
up to
into
his
the
name,
Lich-
but I'm just saying I think it might have been a self-fulfilling prophecy, because he tried to kill his father.
All right. Okay, good to know. So yeah, I won't. No Illidan's, no Guldans. Yeah, no Ragnaroses.
Yep. My cat Sherlock
Although
is.
actually, I do kind of want my dog to kill insects, so maybe Ragnaros would be not a bad name.
Yeah.
You need to train him to kill insects on command
Yeah, exactly.
when you say die insects. That's
Yeah,
that's
Oh,
the
that'd be
command.
so
They
good.
die insects.
Yeah.
that's what you
And
need
he
to do.
pounces.
Yeah.
That's
Jocelyn
actually-
is
that would be
your.
a good name for a cat, right? Because the cats are
Yeah.
the ones who are always chasing down the insects.
There you go.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, does your cat Thrall? Is he going to lead the fellow cats to freedom under one banner?
Absolutely.
Cool.
He's going
There-
to
he's-
the
he's-
horde and alliance of cats.
Yes, he's constantly trying to open the back door and let the other cats out. Yeah.
Well, my cat Sherlock is a dumbass, and my other cat Dexter doesn't kill people that I know of. So they're not really living
But
up
that's
to their
the
names.
point that you know
Yeah.
of.
Oh, okay. All right. He's pulling the wool over my eyes with
Yeah.
his. That's why there was plastic in my room. Okay. Now I get it. Jocelyn, where can folks find you when we're not going on way too long about pet names?
You can find me right here on Amove TV every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are doing The Gamers In, which is my general gaming podcast. You can also find me on Twitter and Twitch. And actually, tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, we have episode 2 of a new podcast. It's kind of like a self-help kind of a show that we're doing, myself and Jules from Torrent Think Tank and Nevermore, who was part of our Ladies' Night. That is over at twitch.tv/JossPlays at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight.
Sweet. I would recommend folks go listen to the most recent Gamers In, because there is this awesome guy on there. I don't know where you found him. That guy should podcast more.
Spoiler alert, it's Garrett.
Now everyone thinks I'm a jerk. You can follow me on Twitter at Garrett Art. You can go to nomoonart.com. That's my graphic design portfolio if you need a graphic designer, and everything else is at amove.tv. Check out all the podcasts that I do over there. Check out harrys.com, or you can use the code TAC to get their $15 Truman starter set for $10 and support the Angry Chicken in the process. And also, keep yourself nice and shaved. Yeah, get rid of that neck beard. It's nice. It's nice. We thank Harry's for their support. We thank you all for listening. And until next time, job's done.
Job's done.
Job's done.
Yes!